Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns, and we're back again for Season 8, Episode 2.
Infinity and beyond times 2, yeah. All right.
Infinity times 2, yeah.
Well, hey, Phil, tell me, because I, noticeably have much more energy on this recording day than the last time. Like, last time I even started it out, I'm trying to have my voice have energy, and
sometimes you gotta force it. Sometimes it's just natural.
Yeah, and so I was thinking about it on the drive in. It's a lovely commute, by the way. We'll get into that in a minute.
The sun's out here in Chicagoland.
I know. I was thinking about starting it out. Yeah, it's a balmy, sweaty, sunny Chicago day, and people are like, "What?" Well, it's 30 degrees. I mean, we've come out of subpar temperatures.
Yep.
We have not met the pile stack on snow of the further west, Midwest.
Right.
Yeah, which I'm fine with.
I'm fine with it too.
Yeah. But if you were going to scale your energy level on a scale of, since it is Season 8 with Infinity, we'll start with 0.
Okay.
And you can go negative if you like. That's a direct response to somebody's coming to break down the door.
I was just thinking, I'm like that.
If you heard sirens, yeah, nobody was shot on the sidewalk when I walked in.
Yeah. That we know of.
Well, when I walked in,
right,
no one was shot.
It was clear.
It was clear. All clear. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. But yeah, so from 0 to 10, energy level, where would you rate yourself today?
Energy level. Let's see. I would probably put myself at a 5.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you're feeling even keeled.
Yeah.
You're not feeling like droopy or
no droopiness.
No droopy. No Eeyore-esque.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. But you're not quite at Tigger yet either.
No, definitely not bouncy. I have felt bouncier in the past, but no, not today.
Not today. Yeah. I was thinking about how do you check in with yourself about that? And unless really, do people sit around a kitchen table as a family eating together? Well, that's a great question, number one. Number two, or dining room table, or TV trays, or
the ottoman or on our couch.
Ottoman are us, where every kind of food is served. But then I was just like, gosh, I mean, is that a great question to check in with your partner or your family members? Spouse.
Yeah.
We can use all the different terms. Extended family of influence or people of influence. Amy has a practice with me. She checks in with me on several different emotional levels.
Yeah.
Are you irritated with me right now? And typically my response is, I can be if you need me to be.
Yeah. It's like the Hulk's anger. It's always there.
Right.
It's just a matter, do you want me to display it? Is that what you're saying?
How do you control it? Well, Banner broke it down in just a delightful way. It's well, if I always stay angry, then it's just, to manifest the Hulk.
Right.
So are you irritated with me?
That's one. How else does she check it? Because that would be a rough one to start off on. Because sometimes
I'll have you take up that conversation with Amy.
Right.
With how do you start out with that question?
Right.
But there's the boldness of the woman I love.
Right.
Right there. I mean, she'll just look at me and she will also. There are probably subtle hints. She'll ask me, "Are you sad?" Now, what's really interesting about that question she can sense, she's empathetic in my like emotional curves. She can sense that I'm sad before I even know I'm sad. Or it's like a placebo effect because she asked me if I was sad, then I get sad. Typically, what I can, like, if she's asking it because she really does sense something, then what I end up doing is I just pause for a moment and check in with myself to say, nah, am I sad? What's going on with me? And then I can have a couple different responses. Like, one is, you know what? I sense that I'm off, but I really don't know what it's about. Yes, I am sad, ... you know, for whatever reason it is. Or, you know, it can be like, hey, can I check back with you about that? I don't sense anything right now, but we've had this conversation enough. Can I come back to it? So it's kind of like, you know, just put it on the shelf and wait for that.
Put a pen in it.
Yeah. Hashtag, that one's for you, Laura. And so like, and then, yeah, I'm going to stop with those two and just like let that, you know, but are you irritated with me? Are you irritated?
But it's pretty good if you're actually able to process those in the way, right? So you're like, are you feeling irritated? Are you feeling sad? Like for me, my emotions are probably not as easily, like I can't necessarily engage them right in that moment, unless there is something that is like directly on, but I have a hard time with that. Yeah. Like most of the time, nope, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
So how do you feel when the internet isn't working connected to the ATEM at church on Sunday morning at 9:55?
Yeah. Yeah, that's easily irritated. You know, those are the easy things to access.
Right.
I mean, that's when you were talking about like when Amy says, "Hey, are you irritated with me?" I mean, it's like Heather, when she launches into a conversation like 7 o'clock in the morning about some deep concept, or what do you think about, like, what do you, like, it's 7 o'clock, I just got up like 15 minutes ago. I'm not thinking this yet. So if you're checking in with me about, hey, are you irritated? Yes, I am. Yes. Like, see, those easily accessible, like, why are we launching into this right now?
So what I heard you say is anytime someone wants to carry a conversation on with you at 7 a.m., you will always be irritated.
Yeah, it would be like, yeah, this is not when I deal with these.
Yeah, it's there was a morning last week, and I was up and around, and we do have our morning routine, and as I shared with you, I've been up since 6:30 this morning, and been slapping sheetrock mud all over the walls, and yeah, and stuff. But there was one time, and Amy was just like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And I'm like, me pausing lets her know probably we're like, really?
Is this the conversation?
and so then I'm like, yeah, everything's fine, babe. You don't seem to be the spry, perky self. I'm like, am I ever spry or perky between 5:30 and 6:30? And hashtag not until that. Like, I come into my own living in my day between 10 and 12 p.m. or 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. You know, like, I mean, just like where I'm like, okay, like right now I've got 2 cups of coffee in me, haven't had anything to eat, so I'm thinking about food. I think I got a burrito in my future. You know, I mean, like, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think physiologically you and I are kind of built, although yeah, internally, emotionally, we're built differently. But we're just like, now, you want to get into solving like the great problems of the world?
Yeah.
Talk to me at 10 p.m. I could talk for a couple hours at 10 p.m. and solve the world's greatest mysteries.
Sure.
Create some mysteries of my own.
That's what I was going to say. That would also create, because whenever you ask a question,
yeah,
you're always going to come up with 1,000 more questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
so I would agree, because that's like, so to me, it's also after the gym, right? So it stimulates my endorphins, all of that, whatever working out does for you.
See, and I was going to go there
right
later, but yeah, I mean, agreed. Yeah, and yeah. So that is why I was checking in on your energy. But what a really good question to ask somebody who's in your life. Like if you're sensing their, I'm using for the podcast listeners who aren't watching the video, I'm using air quotes. But if you're sensing someone's down, how invasive is the question? Hey, where's your energy level at? How do you think you're doing right now? You're like, I'm even keel 5. Yeah.
And to me, like, my energy level, it should be higher, but like right now it's like, it's fine. Like everything's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we could say, 1, 2, or 3 is probably struggle bus material.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't good.
Yeah, I tried to hop on the energy train and missed it completely. Fell on my face.
Oh, I need a Band-Aid for my nose.
Right. Then there's some issues.
Yeah.
We've got some problems.
4, 5, and 6, that leads you into, 6, you're like, things could get rolling and going, like I could be flying high. And so then I start thinking through, like, what would actually take me to a 10? And then I realize that in my life, there's not a lot of things that ever take me to 10. I have very, there's very few things that are 10 energy.
10 material.
I mean, like cocaine cowboys. I mean,
or the cocaine bear.
Yeah, so I've seen something coming about that, but I haven't seen it yet. I have no idea.
I haven't seen it. It's going to be in theaters, I think. If I don't know. I don't think it's out yet. Maybe I'm wrong, but you can correct me out there. But there's some buzz about it, as far like people are like, I'm looking forward to Cocaine Bear. I'm like,
really?
Okay, all right, that sounds good. I mean, and I saw the trailer for it. I mean, it does look pretty exciting.
I think I did too. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it would take me to a 10, but it does kind of it looks fun.
Yeah, so, like then you get into the 7s and the 8s and the 9s and, rock and roll. It's like a euphoric joy going through your body. But that was my point in even asking the question, that I realized that you and I take 2 different approaches on navigating life, because you do go to the gym daily.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't.
Right.
That commitment to being a couch potato has carried on. I'm not sure that it's paying off, but it's carried on. I do think I got hit with the 2 weeks of no sunshine kind of. Like,
yeah, it was,
and the sun shining today. So I'm like, I wonder if like there's something about, like, I mean, I don't know. We swooped through some cold weather and we're getting into warm, and I got a pickup truck waiting for me to put an ignition switch in, and so yeah, that was a really bad thing that happened. Yeah. Went to the grocery store, I think a week ago Thursday. It might be 2 weeks now. 2 weeks ago on Thursday, and went to try to turn the ignition off. Matt Hanley's probably putting his hand on his forehead, because he's like, dude, I feel so bad. I'm like, hey, at least you're available so that I could figure out what to do.
Yeah.
But the key wouldn't turn off.
Oh.
So the truck was in perpetual running.
Huh.
And so for 20 minutes I tried, you know how old keys are. Sometimes you jiggle them and work them around, and then you know,
then eventually
that didn't work.
Didn't work.
Until I got back to the garage, but then I was like, I hadn't pulled in far enough, so I had to put the key back in to turn the truck on to pull the truck forward, because I thought if I had to get under the hood, I'd need more space. Long story short, Matt walked me off the edge. I'm not going to give all the secrets. I'll let him deal with it in a YouTube video on what to do if your key gets stuck.
Yeah.
But I got all the parts, but then it went into sub-freezing weather, lots of wind, chill factor, and I'm in a non-heated garage, and my back was hurt. So, like, this thing that I have to do, I basically have to be outside the truck on my knees, bent down under the floorboard, around to the dash to do this work, which is strenuous on your, like, it's
right.
Yeah. So anyway, but
you're going to do the work.
Yeah.
You think, yeah. So you're handy in that way.
I watched 3 YouTube videos, and yeah.
Any of them by Matt Handley yet?
And Matt let me know, like, hey, this is how this works. And then I ordered the parts, and I'm like, I don't really know how this works. And so then I watched YouTube videos, and the funny part is nobody in the YouTube video really showed anybody doing it on the truck.
Oh.
Out of the truck in real life truck time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but today's tax day. So I'm right in between burrito, fixed truck, and what other taxes do I need? Like, what other receipts do I need to gather for the tax man?
What are you missing?
Yeah. So, you know, and working the countdown, man. I mean, the reality is I'm going to get a big dose of vitamin D next Friday.
You are.
I am flying into Dominican Republic for the annual Project 52 mission trip with our good friend Bill Clark, dropping names all over the place.
Right.
Yeah. And so...
and how many times have you been to the DR?
Oh, my gosh, dude. Well, so here's the deal. My passport expires in 2025.
Ooh.
So my first missions trip, was to Honduras with Pastor Tim. And so I've been to the Dominican Republic from 2016. This will be 2023. So what's that, 7 years?
Yeah. 7, yeah.
Yeah. So, Adam, that math was for you. And minus the pandemic. So this will be my 6th.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But playing guitar, singing some songs.
Shooting some video and some photos.
Yeah, shooting video. And that's the deal. That's what gets me worked up the week before.
Yeah.
Is making the list of all the stuff that you got to make sure you got the stuff for all the stuff that you got to do. And I take a guitar with me, and I have to get all my camera gear, and I have one piece of luggage that can't weigh more than 50 pounds.
It's true. So do you check your guitar?
So this is a little trick for technically in the United States. If you have a musical instrument, the law is in your favor. Like where, you know, now people who travel with cellos and upright basses typically have to buy a seat for their instrument.
Oh.
But with a guitar, they're supposed to, now you need to have a guitar that would fit in an overhead bin. That's
the problem, isn't it? Because a lot of people are not checking bags anymore. They try to fit it up there, and space runs out quick. So,
and I think that depends on your trip. What I've learned is that if I can get through the ticket part, which, I mean, you got to go in and you got to check a bag anyway. But then what I do is I keep the guitar with me, and then I check it at the gate.
No. So they'll still put it down. They'll just,
yeah, they put it down, but it's on top of stuff, and yeah.
You still do a hard case with that, right?
I do, because I figure if it, beats the case, I have a kind of a nifty soft-sided hard case that that does matter. Like, it matters that you can have the guitar can be in two different cases, and it's a sizable difference on how the case was shaped or whatever. Now, I think it's Mondo, or Mono cases, one of the two. Hashtag not a sponsor. Like, they have an actual, like, reinforced. I mean, these cases cost as much as like what I've paid for guitars. But then I don't know if they come with a guarantee or a warranty. And actually, hashtag let's hope this doesn't happen again. Last year was the first year that anything really happened with luggage. We'll see. But it was kind of, I'd heard horror stories of all of these travel things and stuff like that. But we were just coming out of the pandemic, and there was problems with certified mechanics and all that stuff, and so part of the group got stuck in Des Moines, and they missed our flight out of Atlanta. Like, they were landing and they saw our plane heading to Dominican. And
you were on it, and some of them weren't. Me and the Clark sisters were able to make that, and Gather Coles too. Because they had come to Chicago. And then the other group, they just, man, I tell you what, I miss a flight, I wouldn't even know what to do. I need a handler. Somebody who would be like, okay, now here's our next step. But Bill, they got rerouted. They went all the way back. They went north to D.C., and from D.C. then went directly to Dominican, and got in 9 hours after us. Oh.
Yeah, so they were rolling in at like 1:30 or 2 a.m.
Not fun.
And then you're talking about like a 2-hour time change, right? So like, I don't know, like if it's 6 a.m. there, it's 4 a.m. here. That's what really messes me up for the early morning breakfast. Yeah. Who wants to start eating at 4 a.m.?
Nope.
I actually know that I've been up until 4 a.m. At least twice or 3 times in the last month. I don't want to start eating breakfast then, or talking with people. That brings us right back to
where we started. Energy level at 4 a.m.
This is the point of infinity. Number 1. Did you see the loop I brought you back around? Yeah.
Right back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I was landing right at energy level number 6 ish. And then that's what got me thinking about, like, physiologically, how much pain can really suck and drain your energy. And I was like, I'm not really sure if I am at a 6 or if I've been at a 3 for so long that 5 feels really energetic. Yeah. But.
So that was the pain in the back, right? That's
yeah,
the piece?
Like, I mean, it was stupid. Like, I think I bent over with a drill and was drilling a hole for conduit for electric.
Yeah.
And I didn't, like, get down on a knee to do it. I just, the wrong way to pick up a box.
Right.
And it pulled a muscle that I've never pulled before. It's weird.
It is weird.
So weird. And then what I figured out is that the older you get, the slower recovery is.
That's true.
But.
And mine's usually also delayed. Like, if I pull something, I mean, you can feel it, but then it's like the next morning, usually, like, getting up, I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good.
I know.
It takes like an hour to get it like at least to a place where you can mobility is not an issue.
And so then you feel like the Tin Man and be like, would somebody please bring me a
can of oil?
Can of oil. Come on, let's loosen these things up. Loosen it up.
Somebody bring me the oil.
So I saw a couple weird things on the way in.
Let's hear about the weird things.
So for everyone who's listening to this in the presence of any child under the age of 14, you should just fast forward for the next 7 minutes, because I'm going to use the word jackass a lot.
Earmuffs, everybody, earmuffs.
Yeah. So I'm driving, and Tui's kind of a weird exit place, because there's an off ramp and on ramp, and then you have a lot of people trying to, and it's weird how this thing is set up, because I think that the on ramp is like coming from the north, and the off ramp is going to the south, and I there might actually be 3 exits, because you can off to go west, you can off to go east, and then you can get on to go south, right all in this section.
Right.
And it's a major artery. Like, you can jump on Tui and go west, and you can hit O'Hare. I mean, you're within 7 minutes of O'Hare if you just keep going west on Tui. How do you like the sounds of that, Chicago? Right. Who's figuring this shit out? All right. And I figure if I got jackass hat,
might as well throw in the shit,
too. Yeah. So this jackass in like a Blazer or Suburban comes just winging through, and I'm like, there's somebody's trying to merge, blah, 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 and this guy's just like, I'm like, I think I could be in an accident right now, so I'm going to get out of the way. Now, because I'm a middle lane traveler, unless there's time to be made up, and then you need to hit the 80-plus lane, which is the left lane. The right lane is you're just dealing with everybody else's bullshit on who's getting on and who's getting off and where they're going and all that stuff. So I like to keep it right down the middle.
There you go.
Keep your bubble in the middle. And so anyway, yeah. So then, from Tui, then you're going to Peterson, right? And by the time... And Peterson can be tricky, too.
There's some people who fly on through there, too.
Because, again, you have the off-ramp, you have the on-ramp, and then Cicero is within the next, technically it's a half a mile, but I would say it's on this side of just past a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
And so, and you pretty much got to slow down, and especially when all these bumper cars are banging around. So we're between Tui and Peterson, and all of a sudden this Suburban or Tahoe, it was a 4-door Tahoe is what it was, and beige, oh my gosh. Yeah, so it pulls over to the on the side, on the part where they're not supposed to go. The buses can go, but you can't.
Yeah.
I'm doing 75 in the middle lane, and this person is screaming past me.
Oof.
And then is just like figuring. I'm like, dude, you're gonna hit the exit. You're gonna hit Peterson's exit before you even get back in and stuff. Oh my gosh. So that was the jackass moment of the day. Then I saw a Toyota Seneca minivan. Yeah, soccer mom. But it was outfitted with a heavy-duty luggage rack carrier carrying a spare tire.
It's kind of an odd place to
like
put
they're
the spare
going
tire.
To the Outback.
Yeah.
But they're not in Australia. Yeah, so I saw that. Then, cherry on the top, kudos to this person. I really respect everything that they represent. But 30-degree weather, if you're wearing a winter hat that has, it's like a mugger mask, or a robber's mask, it's got the nose covering, but the mouth hole and the 2 eye holes. what is that, like a,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a knit hat that like back in the 70s was cool, but now people like,
Right.
if you have to wear that, should you be riding a bike?
No.
Unless the only thing you can ride is a bike.
Right.
All right. So with that, Nick Pranger, I found it deep within me to find the energy for at least an incomprehensible rant of my ability to use the word jackass. That one's for you.
So when you're looking at those issues, are you somebody who has learned, I mean, because in Chicago, because I was never really a honker, but then I go to Chicago and I've learned to use my horn. So I've become one of them.
I love this. You're like,
so I don't mind.
I never was
horn.
a honker, but now
Right.
I toot my own horn.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's something that's regular practice now. I mean, like somebody who's, as you have pointed out, the jackasses that are out on the road, who are flying through things and, you know, not caring who they knock over. Like, I also don't mind. Like, if you're going to try to hit, you're going to at least hear my horn.
Yeah.
And so are you a honker, or do you just let it slide?
So we talked about this on the last episode that, I mean, really for the last 3 months, I've been not commuting.
Yeah.
I mean, saved on the gas bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Because of my interior renovation project
Right.
at our new home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my asterisk. That's the, I haven't been logging the miles and driving in Chicago like Chicago for about 90 days.
Yeah.
It's been a good break. Because where I was at before that all started,
Yeah.
whether I was here for the studio or here for our community gatherings on Sunday, it just is one of those things where in the place where it happens the most, where I turn into someone with, and it's not Tourette's really, but I audibly lose my cool and my gait of, usually when I swear, like earlier, like it's planned. I don't just walk through life and, you know, like just use swear words. There was a time when I did that earlier in my life, in my young teens, mid-teens.
Yeah.
But then, like, there have been times that even in sacred places, I would choose language that would be coarse for a purpose. It's an attention getter. People who aren't listening start to like, what is this foul-mouthed person doing? You know, foul. Yeah, but it got to a place where, like, it was a non-controlled response of yelling profanities at people.
Yeah.
For just, I mean, but in the ultimate place is at Foster, taking the left-hand turn to be able to head out to the interstate. And at that corner, there's a turn left green light after the red light.
Yeah.
So what it does is it lets green go north and south, I think. Yeah, north and south. So that the people in the crosswalks can walk over.
Sure.
Because it doesn't do any good to have a green light when you have people waiting on the corner to walk. So what they do is whoever's programmed the traffic camera or the traffic light computer, like, it makes sense. I'm totally cool with this. So then what they do is once it goes red light on the straightaway, then it gives you a green light for about 3.5 cars. and the fourth car gets through because at least one or two will go through the yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no camera at that light,
Right.
so then that helps
So
too.
Yeah.
And that's the wonder of technology, because if you don't know if there's a camera, they post signs, folks. The other thing is your phone can tell you,
Mm-hmm.
camera light ahead. Yeah, so, with that, oh man, but I remember the first time I went off on this person. And the thing is if they're paying attention to what's going on, shouldn't they be watching the traffic light? I mean, okay, you see red, right? But there's a green arrow right above your head. Your job is to pay
attention.
Yeah. Like the lady this morning on the corner of Elm and Lincoln.
Uh-huh.
And I come up to the four-way stop, and she was next. It was her turn, but obviously a distracted driver. And I'm waiting for her to finish up her business in her purse while she's going. And then about the time I'm like, oh, well, she's really in her purse, so I'm going to turn right. And then she looks up, and then she's startled. And as I'm creeping forward, then she takes her foot off the brake. And I'm like, waved her on through. Come on.
Hurry up.
I wasn't like, oh, I need to get around this corner and I'm in such a hurry because I'm running. No, it was just like.
Nobody else was going.
And there's two cars behind her.
Yeah.
By this time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Busy intersection.
Yeah. I feel like you got a job to do when you're behind a wheel. To
honk?
No. I'm just like, your job is to go. I mean, like, when it's your turn, you go.
Oh, my gosh, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
my job is
not distracted drivers.
My job is not my phone.
All over, right?
My job is not my phone.
Right.
And there are times when I'll have my phone flipped out, and just in case I get a phone call on the way home or something like that. Mm-hmm. But typically I'm just like, no, I just need to. And I purposefully, like, even recently, I can count last week, there was probably 3 phone calls that I didn't make. I used to, if I was commuting, I'd use that time, to call people, catch up, and do whatever. I'm like, no.
You're going to do your job behind the wheel. Yeah. I mean, I do enjoy, I mean, if it's a longer commute, I will try to do some of that, because I also, like, it's through the vehicle now.
Well,
right. So if I'm
technically, aren't we like hands-off phone?
Right. Hands-free. You're supposed to be hands-free.
Yeah. There's a law.
Right.
So, like, if the police saw you with your phone in your hand, they could pull you over.
Right.
They'd have to be pulling people over anyway to start doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're a honker.
Yeah, I mean, now. I mean, especially, those people who are like, you've got to do your job. If it's green, I do like to go. And then people are sitting there and you're like, okay, so is this going to happen today, or should we just camp out here? Should we plan for a Zoom meeting where we can,
Kumbaya,
collaborate
Lord.
On how to be able to move through this light.
Someone's snoring, Lord Kumbaya. Wake up and let's move it.
We gotta move, man. We gotta move.
Man, get all wound up.
I know. But I also have, there's the conflict in me that, there are times when I'm on, driving that I'm just, angry. Right? And it's everything. Somebody's not going. Somebody's trying to, flip in and out of, one lane. You got one lane and people are still trying to make the maneuver in it. Just stop. We can go with the flow. Now, we want to make sure that everybody's trying to move with the flow, and that's where everything always gets mucked up, right? It's somebody's not going or somebody's trying to disrupt the whole flow.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So this is the reason why. I mean, Chicago's usually top 1 or 2 in worst traffic in America. You know, even though we're not the biggest, you know, we're number 3 largest city still. But
not only are we not the biggest, we're not also the best.
Right.
At driving.
So I mean, but yeah, so our traffic is still one of the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be some ways in which in order to navigate that, but I haven't seen any good suggestions yet. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I just have to move into a more zen moment and just be like, okay,
yeah,
just breathe.
Yeah, and sometimes
okay.
I get there and I do okay, but like other times, like if it's just like thing after thing, then I'm just like, then I'm pissed. So I try to remember that too. Like, all right, breathe. Like, I mean, and maybe it's because there's sometimes when I want to get to where I'm going and I'm not behind usually. I'm usually pretty good on, all right, it's going to take me 40 minutes. So I'm going to plan for 50.
Well, kudos to you. I cheat that by like putting in the destination and checking traffic.
Yeah.
And be like, all right, well, it can get worse from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's a joy. It is a joy.
I was trying to bend that around to, like, how do you think that the manifestation of your anger coming out during traffic really correlates with not being willing to face the things that make you angry in real life? I don't know that there's a string there to pull.
Yeah. Like, is it psychological that there's something else that's actually at the root?
Well, and I guess what I'm wondering about is like, is it the place where anger can manifest? You feel like it's appropriately placed? Do you ever feel like when you're angry about stuff that it's like not appropriately placed anger?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that's a stretch. I mean, that's a for sure psychological like outpouring, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked about like it's the kick the dog theory, right? So you're like, some boss yells at me at work, then there's these things that are happening. Then the commute on the way home is bad, and like those things I can't control. And then the dog takes a crap in front of you, right? Kick the dog, right? Because and this is not me saying you should do animal abuse. Don't.
No.
Steer clear of that. Don't do that. But I'm just saying it's the theory. It's the idea that you're going to take it out on somebody who's then in front of you that you can control. Usually that you also know how to like navigate that relationship.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part, because then it's misplaced.
Yeah.
Right? You're angry at this commute, you're angry at this boss, you're angry at coworker A, B, or C, or all of them. And then you're like, but now I'm going to take it out on somebody else instead of putting it there. And it's not a healthy concept.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would say that, yes, it happens all the time.
Yeah. I was just like going through in my head about like things, because I navigate usually off high traffic times, which is an enjoyable choice for me.
Yeah. I think it's smart.
Well, I mean, like, for instance,
if you're able to, then that would be yes.
I mean, like, it's making decisions for common courtesy, right?
Right.
So if backed up traffic that would normally take you 5 minutes to navigate takes you 15, i.e., when the elementary school system at Crow Island gets out
right
at 2:35 in the afternoon. There's multiple ways out of this sleepy bedroom community that I live in. But the natural way that I've just out of habit go out of town, I'm like, I go through a 20-mile-an-hour zone that if children are going to school or getting out of school, what should take you 3 to 5 minutes to get through, like, boom, you're stuck for 20 minutes. Well, I mean, it's like my next door neighbor. Been doing construction. I don't start any power machines until after 10 a.m. He's a retired gentleman.
Yeah.
Now, the working professionals to the other side of me, and they're probably not happy anytime I'm running like power tools.
Oh.
Because they both work
from home. Yeah.
All of a sudden they hear my saw. Or me pounding on the wall with a hammer. But, you know, I mean, like, you try to be courteous. You know, it's like, I mean, I think that the work hours, like, I think technically I could probably run machinery, power tools, and make construction noise until 8 p.m. But, you know, I knock off at 6. I mean, people, you know, like, nobody's getting ahead in life by me showing up during school exit and me being pissed off. I mean, like, it's just poorly spent emotional bandwidth.
It's true.
You know, so why would you set yourself up for that?
Yeah.
In my case, it's poor planning.
Right.
Or just being an idiot when I'm like leaving and I'm like, hey, what time is it? Oh, I don't want to run into school.
Yeah. And now it's too late because you already left.
Yeah, I'm on the wrong path.
Right.
I should have taken a right on Green Bay instead of a left. Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, it just, you know, and then.
So sometimes there's the planned navigation, right, where you're like, I have a destination. I need to be there X time. When should I be leaving? To be able to get there.
Yeah.
And say, all right, so we know that in our fair city, you know, there's always going to be things that chances are could pop up, right? So I could still plan for that, but I could also then show up 15, 20 minutes early to X destination.
Right.
Which isn't always good either, you know. I mean,
right.
Sometimes it's good to be early.
Oh, man. It's like, hurry up and wait.
Right.
Hurry up, wait. Well, hey, you know what? Hashtag thank God for blessings.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why I said that, but they finished the bridge project at Peterson. Traffic's a lot better ever since that happened. And for those of you who aren't living in traffic strenuous situations, enjoy the peace.
Yeah. Count your blessing.
Yeah. But, you know, we bring up anger, and I think to your point, I think that there's been a move through and an evolution. You know, like, think about it. People who were born in the 40s, people who were born in the 30s, we can single it out into humanity's at the time what was permissible to call, you know, like men from the 30s and 40s and 50s weren't often men who talked about their emotions.
No.
And you know, and so like you could be at the angry side of a stick pretty quickly. With those generations. We've been on the side of anger, or we've been on both sides of anger, could be the thing, where we've been angry at someone, or someone's been angry at us. And we could look at that too, multiple coins, you know, as children, adolescents, young adults. Like when I think of like work and bosses,
yeah,
I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've had my lead pastors like angry at me. But I remember those times.
Right. It's hard to forget.
And I will say I deserved their wrath. I mean, really.
Yeah, so you've understood the reason why.
Oh, I mean,
but,
yeah.
But it's also things that stick in your mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You remember the trauma.
Yeah. And I mean, fortunately, I would say that I can very easily put out there that I grew up in a home of relative peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't remember my dad rising up in anger as a frequent occurrence. And so it's one of those things where other people who could be listening be like, oh man, you should have met my old man. Oh man, you should have. And then there, it could be people who be like, man, take a look in the mirror, because, like I can look back. And I think that that's the thing that has me really thinking right now is we've talked about seasons of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember with great fondness moving from my mid-20s and through my mid-40s. That those 2 decades, that was a run. But I really am. I'm looking at my later third of life, and so then, your mind functions in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to how you look at life. I know that I have to really be on guard about memories.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to how what memories am I focusing on? Like weird shit just pops up in my head, and I'm like, how do I remember that?
Yeah.
And why when it's like I haven't thought about that memory for 2 or 3 decades, if you pinpoint it and go back to it and stuff like that. And so, there's a lot going on there, but in regards to anger, then, it brings me to question, at what level do you allow yourself, and I know I'm speaking in the context of anger, but I really mean this in a broader sense of like, well, we're only human.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so much that can go into a vessel before something comes out of a vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, at what point, do you give yourself room to be flawed?
Mm-hmm.
And that's coming from a radio host on KXRT. And she was doing a great job, and she played Human by, I forget the artist's name.
Bones, something.
Yeah. Rattle and Bones?
Skin and Bones.
Chain and Bones?
Something.
Yeah. And, and she said, that's the thing. Hey, if you need it today, give yourself a little room to be human, because we're only human after all.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, and we're all flawed. And I thought, okay, so how as humans do we navigate through life where we're able to have room for our flawedness?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a good start question. And then my other question to that is, but if that flawedness is unchecked, or like what turns the compass to a place for self-correction, redirection,
mm-hmm.
and then even moving into a place of what does it mean? Like, how do people challenge themselves in becoming more than what they've ever been before? And by more, I mean like whether it's more refined, maybe it's disciplined in an area. I don't even know. Like it's really vague and loose. Maybe you can tighten that up for me.
Well, the first things coming to mind would be, I was just talking through or considering this morning the things that we hold on to, that we remember, and that ultimately then become a part where, so it's the flawedness and I don't even know if that's an actual word, flawedness, but I always add a ness to the things that are fun. So, so in our flawed natures, when our flawed sometimes responses to things, like we can say, oh man, I'm feeling bad about that. I have regrets. And regrets are the things that kind of stick around. Why? Because if you're asking that question, what are things that you regret right now, and you're like pulling back all of your memories of regret. Why? Because they're easily accessible.
Okay.
Like I know them because I'm attaching myself to them constantly.
Yeah.
I regret the words that I spoke or whatever. I regret the not doing something that I should have done or could have done. I wanted to take an adventure, and yet, nope, I just continue to do more work and work, right? So there's these regrets and the things that we constantly attach ourselves for the future, right? And then those things, and this is where it's that cycle. Like, do we get stuck in the cycle of regret, of shame, of remorse, whatever you want to throw in there? Usually, and we're talking about the negative things, right? The things that were, and how much do we get bogged down by all of this cycle of that?
Yeah.
And then it affects our moving forward.
Yeah.
And so I think when we're looking at the nature of humanity, of being human, and still saying, how do I move forward still? And one I would say is sometimes we have to learn to let go. We've got to let go of some of the regrets. We have to let go of some of the guilt. And there's an outlet. I mean, spiritual natured things, of course, are helpful for people to be able to consider, especially in that, because how do you actually let it go? I mean, a counselor would be a good outlet for that too. But like, we have to figure out in humanity, in our humanness, is like letting go of some of that. Because if I'm remembering it, it's become a cycle. So and this is where that kind of that follow-up then to what you were talking about is like, how do we recognize that we're in this cycle? And I would say that it's things, I mean, that we're going to bring back stuff from this episode already, is like in community and in relationship, sometimes people are already saying, I think you're stuck. I think you're stuck in a cycle, and I'm trying to point it out. Like, how are you feeling? Are you irritated? Are you sad? Are you mad? Are you glad? So there are things that in relationship and in community, our community and our relationships are going to know sometimes before we even recognize that we're stuck in this same cycle of regret, remorse, and pointing it out then and saying, hey, like, because sometimes in conversation when you're talking, and like, if you're stuck in a loop of what we call even negativity, you're like, yeah, like you're kind of Eeyore right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I need you to be Tigger.
Well, so then that takes me to, can the question of energy, can the question of energy be a non-invasive, non-irritating question to ask? Like, if I'm like, hey dude, we are role playing right now. Okay, so I'm like, hey dude, are you irritated? And your response would be,
yeah, and for me, if it's like, especially if it's nothing that I recognize right off the bat, like I just came off of bad track, I'd just be like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm fine.
Okay, so this is role play,
right,
everyone. So I'm like, yeah, you're saying you're good,
right,
but I'm sensing that you're not good.
Right.
So then at that point, then you get in your head.
Right.
And then you're starting to like work through this. Now hold it. What have I done?
Yeah.
What have I said? How have I acted in front of
Right.
that would lead you, and move that versus this role play. Hey, dude, energy level, where would you say you're at?
Yeah.
And think about bad traffic and think about that.
Right.
Where you at?
Yeah. So bad traffic, 3.
All right. So you're redlining.
Uh-huh.
All right. Can you put words around that on what brings you in at a 3?
Yeah. Yeah, so man, out on the road today, I mean, there were some real jackasses.
Infinity point number 2.
Right.
All right.
I mean, and because so these people, those folks have now affected, and whether it was my energy, whether it was my maybe I was at a 5, and this focus has now brought me down to a 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, this has changed from point A to point B, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember there was a time Amy walked in the door after work one day, and she just looked at me and she goes, "Is everything okay?" And I'm like, you know what? My day started out with this, and let me tell you about the 4 roadblocks that I ran into. And quite frankly, my nose is just really sore right now. And she looked at me. She goes, "Really?" I'm like, "No, it's imagery."
I didn't actually run into a wall.
Right. But what I'm saying is that when I think for people who are listening who have relationships that maybe there are things spoken in the relationship that leads to a trigger of anger. And be like, really, why are you asking me that again? Why are you bringing this up again? How come we have to deal with this, and where somebody's, and stuff like that? I just wonder if the energy question becomes a gateway into conversation that disarms people. And you know what? The reality is, if it's an even playing field in partnership, the question should go both ways. So when somebody asks you, "Hey, where's your energy level at right now?" It could be like, like for me, I'm like, I'm trying to figure it out if it's a 5 or 6. I'm definitely not at a 7. Oh, okay. How about and then there's the art of communication and being invested in the other. A mirror question is appropriate.
Yeah.
How about you? Because maybe somebody's asking the question about energy because they want someone else to be involved in where their energy's at.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to ask for help, but I can answer my energy. I mean, because then again,
I didn't even consider the other side of that. So
yeah, and so
they're not just seeing the thing in you, but maybe they're also trying to be able to say, "Hey, can you see the thing in me?"
Yeah, yeah. And so that's the, and then like in our family unit, kind of how it goes is whoever's energy is pent up the most gets the first crack at venting, just because with not having seen each other for 12 to 14 hours, how do you check in and like, it's not like Eeyore, how'd your day go, and stuff like that.
Right.
But then the courteous thing, again, these are relationships of interest where you are purposefully going after, I want to go deeper. And, and I think it's really important to identify, I mean, like, how many times do I do things and I do things on my own? I'm pretty much independent contractor, independent artist.
Yeah.
Independence, but that doesn't mean I want to be alone. Right? And so, like, that that checking in moves us to a place. So I think you bring up some really great points, and I think that in the discovery of this, now this has been in problem identification, but the reality is that there's got to be some place, to your point about you have to let it go, or you have to be able to work through that. I personally, hashtag, not everyone's going to agree with me on this point, but I think that there are practices in other nationalities, there are practices in other cultures that live into how you face these things of whether it's regret. To me, regret doesn't move me into shame. Mm-hmm. But being shamed is a heavy cloak to wear. And so, it's one of those things where, when in a capitalistic society, in the pursuits move into success, that the only way to be able to get your gold star, if it's all measured by numbers, by how much, by numerical value, by what's acquired or gained, then how do you deal with moving through when those things when the measures aren't met? Mm-hmm. And so in that, I really do think that you have to give yourself permission to not be perfect all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not about perfection.
Right. And I think that especially, I know people who are perfectionists.
Yeah.
And, especially, projects of passion, when you get a perfectionist in the mix, this can be disastrous. And I'm not saying that every perfectionist leads to disaster. I'm not trying to say that, but
right.
Perfectionists, when you're in the mix of a project, especially if it's a team project, whatever, that it can be disastrous because it also could lead, this isn't going the way that I want it to go. This isn't what I planned. It's not the ideal. It wasn't, and your ideal is always perfection. Yeah. And you're like, is anything actually ever going to be perfect?
Yeah.
Can we let that go in order to try to understand, hey, what does this look like if it's imperfect?
Yeah.
And is it okay? And some people are like, no, it can't be okay until it's this, right? No. How can we let that ideal go then and say, what happens if it's not perfect? Let's play that out.
Yeah.
What happens if there's a little thing that might be not exactly to your ideal? What would it look like?
Yeah.
What would be the negative consequences to that, right? So it's like playing the tape out.
Yeah.
Right? Let's actually see how this works out, as we would even role play through this and say, so we missed this little piece, a graphic design, right? And I know a lot of graphic artists that are very perfectionist. They have an idea. So what happens if we miss that? How many people do you think will catch it?
Yeah.
Not many.
It was funny because we go back to the renovations at the house, and I was telling Amy just a couple nights ago, one of the projects was to blow out the wall between the kitchen and the living room and give open space, because I got so used to, in Des Moines, we had a galley kitchen, but it was the center of conversation, and a meal was being prepared, whichever family was there, and so around fixing food and conversation, and the record player was around the corner, and music was playing, and then at on Green Bay we had an open kitchen into dining room area, which is elongated into living space too. And man, talk about my happy place.
Mm-hmm.
I could be cooking food. We could have family over, and stuff like that. And I mean, carrying conversation and doing all that, and all around there. So I like to cook, and I like to be able to interact with some of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of it, just some of it, but
just a piece,
the part,
just a slice. Not all.
No. Hashtag no regret. But so it blew this thing out, and Amy was talking to me about the workmanship, craftsmanship, and stuff like that, and about the progress made in the last couple of weeks. And I'm like, yeah, it's a blessing and it's a curse. It's both.
Mm-hmm.
I said, because I didn't ever ask for my eye to be that good, as far as like, I was looking at a line and I'm like, dang it, that thing seems to be drooping. So I got the tape measure out, and literally I saw a 1/2 inch bow. I mean, when you look at a tape measure,
mm-hmm.
a 1/2 inch, but when you're looking at a straight line across 6 feet, a 1/2 inch dip changes the straight line so that it's not straight. I'm like, yeah, I had to cut 2 2x4s to get the right one to prop up so that I could be able to get, the supports that had dropped down because of what I took out to be able to get it straightened up again, and stuff. And even though that in one side, I can, I just have to move into what can I live with, what can I not live with.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can live with it, I let it go. If I cannot live with it, then I have to. And, you and I were working on a project this fall. And I'm like, hey, Phil, welcome to Steve's project. We're going to do this 3 times.
We'll plan for it in advance.
Yeah. I mean, and so, and it was just fair warning. Hey, how are we going to do this? Well, I didn't know how. Mm. I mean, we make that part up as we go, but I figured, yeah, you might have to do it 3 times. Now, the planners in the whole crew, listening to us right now, will be like, yeah, but if you would have planned it, you'd only had to do it once. I'm like, there's a good point to that.
Right.
That is correct. But when you show up and don't know really the extent of your work, and you're just prepared for whatever's going to come,
yeah.
So there's a nimbleness, there's a flexibility. But have you ever seen Bake Squad?
No, I don't think so.
So I think Tercy is her name. She got discovered through the Hell's Kitchen dude, or some cooking show, and they got kids cooking against each other and all this stuff. So anyway,
yeah.
But she did a spin-off, and she assembled 4. She calls them their Bake Squad, and each one has their own individual thing that they do really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just bringing people in, special event, and then they do this dessert, whatever, for some celebration.
Yeah.
But there is a lady who's this big flavor thing, and then the moderator, the chef, she goes, we're all really good at what we do. And she goes, and I know you are a perfectionist. And even though we come up with our big plans, sometimes we have to put out what we know to be excellent. And even though we weren't able to fulfill what our plans were, we're able to present to the people what we're known for. Okay? And this leads me to Wabi Sabi, which is a Japanese term of finding the beauty in imperfections. And people who ask Google, the third teaching of Wabi Sabi philosophy is simple. Strive not for perfection, but for excellence instead. In other words, simply do your best to the best that you can be. Now, there was a transition in my life, and this occurred when we joined forces together at Gloria Dei. When I walked into Gloria Dei, I knew that that church was so big that there was no way that I could be everything for it. Another key in life is to recognize what your own weaknesses are and to be able to embrace other people's help if they're excellent in those areas. And so, yeah, perfectionists and perfection. I personally, in my art, celebrate the art of not perfect. And I would say that, and when I use the term art, I would say in all areas of my creative outlet, you know, and just recognize I have more permission for that in my life than probably, like, I would I want things to be better than I ever could, like, relationally. I don't want things to be slightly imperfect, you know? I mean, I want things to be good and right and stuff like that. So anyway, those are some other random
Wabi
thoughts.
Sabi.
Wabi Sabi.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Have you never heard of that?
I haven't heard of that. Oh.
Yeah, actually, it was my pottery teacher, Mr. Dorn, who taught me about Wabi Sabi. And how that, he's like, no, it's okay. And where that showed up, do you remember my floppy pots?
Yeah.
Do you know that when we were at the farmer's market, I sold more floppy pots than nice round bowls? And floppy pots came out of a combination of things. My just starting out in pottery.
Yeah.
Which actually the first time it was even brought up to me is I was at the wheel and I took a wall too thin or something and it kind of crumbled, and Mr. Dorn's like, now hold on. Let's just get a dowel. Let's get a stick. Let's see if we can rescue something out of this. Now, since then I've done other reading, and I really take personally the idea of that we have limited resources on this earth. So anytime you fire clay doesn't get to be made again. Like, but if you don't fire the clay, you can repurpose the clay and reuse the clay, and you can do that for so many times. And then with mixing it back in with other newer clay, elasticity, blah, 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 blah. So, like, there's a part of, if there's an interesting form that comes out, yeah, there were these floppy pots, and it was just pots that got either too wet or the walls got too thin and they crumbled or tumbled and with these weird shapes. But man, store owners loved them to be able to put up at the cash register. I mean, there was people that they're like, man, I would love to set fruit in this, you know, and stuff like that. And it was, I mean, at that point, I'm just like, wow, well, I can make these. It's not hard to screw something up, which might actually be a bumper sticker for my life. You know, I've proven that time and time again.
Right.
You know, but then, you know, then there's the realization. Now, you know, I mean, that was like my freshman year of doing pottery, and now I'm, you know, working with other dynamics, but still, there's a part of where I've tried to make things pristine, shiny, nice, and I've just come down to that that's not authentically me. So then there becomes this thing, this is going to be aha. At what point is the vessel a reflection of the Creator?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So then when we get into this war within ourselves on regret, shame, going down a road of, in our head, dwelling on the parts of our imperfection.
Mm-hmm.
It's the theocratic, I don't even know if that's the right word for this. It's the part of being taught that God the Father, is holy and righteous,
Mm-hmm.
that moves into our Western cultured heads that God is perfect and there is nothing imperfect about God.
Right.
Even to the point of creation, and that really man created the fall.
Right.
Okay? Yet, if we look through Scripture, Scripture tells us that we're loved. That we're loved when we were in the womb of our mother.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Rohr's teaching would be that God has not hated you, God has always loved you.
Right.
So with that, I come back to this question again in regards to how much room can we allow within our life to be human, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you just part of that teaching that you just talked about right there is that there will be people who will embrace imperfection. Right? So when they looked at your floppy pots and you're like, this is imperfect. This wasn't, the original intention of this pot was not to make it floppy, but it turns out it was floppy. And people are like, oh, I like imperfection.
Yeah.
And to the point where it became one of your highest sellers, right? I mean,
Right.
People were like, give us more floppy pots. And you're like, oh, but that's imperfection.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we love it.
Because it's not like Target.
Right.
And that's what I finally just gave over into, is like, I'm going to keep on working my craft. I'm going to keep on, the deeper I get into this is a lot like our podcast. The more I don't know, right? Now I'm considering shrinkage rates and,
Right.
which, I mean, hey, take a dip in Lake Michigan and shrinkage rates apply. And so then, really, when you go through, there's so much. And I think that's the part that I would push for all people to consider, is the complexity. Whatever you think you know, you really don't, because you're only getting so much of what's really going on.
Yeah.
The complexities of each individual human being are far greater than our ability to comprehend what's really going on. And so when you're looking in the mirror and you're like, why? Well, I mean, like, the answer to why could be your own decisions. The other answer to why is you just need to wait. That's not what this generation of our humanity wants to hear.
Right.
But, it's
Immediacy is what we want.
yeah. And, so like I think that, and we've talked about different philosophies. See, and there could be people who, like, in a purist sense, would be like, oh, don't talk about Wabi Sabi. That's a philosophy. Well, yeah, but hold on. I mean, there's a culture here that has practiced this, and the idea is that there were artists who would actually create an imperfection because nothing is perfect within their art piece.
Right.
And basically the meaning of Wabi Sabi is a way of living that focuses on finding beauty within the imperfections of life and accepting peacefully the natural cycle of growth and decay. And so, I mean, we started out talking about back pain and how recovery times are longer the older you get. Well, you know what? Maybe that's the source of my anger. Infinity point number 3. Where it always comes back around.
Right.
Like, if I work through this last counseling session that we just had together for everyone to hear,
right,
I could say, I don't like the idea of growing older. I don't like the idea of my body moving into a place of degeneration versus generation.
Yeah.
And it's maddening to think about other people who get the next 20 years to enjoy the strength of their continuation while I'm moving into the next 25 or 30 years of my life of decay. You know? Now, if you're talking scotch, the longer it sits on the shelf, the smoother it becomes.
Right.
And I ain't no Ricky Suave.
Ricky Suave.
Hashtag bring me back to the 80s. But really, then how am I approaching if I am looking in the mirror? Who's really irritating who? Is Amy irritating me because she's asking me the question, hey, are you irritated? Or have I just not discovered that I'm irritated with my own decay? Whoa.
Right. Just went deep.
I think the other part of isn't there room for us to be human?
Right.
Does force us that we cannot escape the accountability of asking the question, are we taking away from humanity? Or are we accentuating humanity? Are the situations that I'm in that I'm bettering? Or am I hindering? If my actions, my habits, my practices are creating a negative net result, and I know these are all quantitative, and how do you do that with, am I a detriment, or am I functioning in contribution?
And I think it's then to be able to say, how do we learn to not just accept imperfection, but to actually embrace it and say, all right, so what does this mean now? Yeah.
Well, case in point, if you're talking about household chores, how many times would a person need to know not to put blue jeans that are high in a dye factor in with white
clothing
or bedding?
Right.
Like how many? Like there's learnable responses, and that's in a task format.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to consider on today's episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and some
Wabi Sabi.
Right. A lot of things that were woven together even.
Yeah.
From the very beginning portion of where we usually just talk about whatever.
Yeah.
Into the topic of the day, and a lot of things are just woven together. So
yeah.
Consider it.
So, I think in the takeaway, ask yourself if there's a way to, within your community, within your relationships of influence, the people who matter to you the most, if maybe you've got this whole relationship thing figured out and every conversation's a piece of cake.
Maybe. Haven't met anybody yet that's like that, but sure.
But consider using the energy question. And actually, from our conversation, I'm gonna share with Amy about our podcast. She always asks. She's like, "Hey, how's the podcast going?" I'm like, "You know what? I got a great new question for you. How's your energy?"
Yeah, it's good. It's a place to check in. Oh boy, the things we learned and the things we talk about. So allow yourself to sit with it, even if you're, going through struggling or whatever. Like, sit with it for a second. So, yeah.
And if you want a good chuckle, pull up John Travolta's Urban Cowboy. I mean, we didn't talk about much media today, so,
It's true.
It's a flashback.
Uh-huh.
Or flash dance. Or, I mean, like...
Flash dance.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
See ya.